You're listening to episode 22 of Post Production Podcast. Hello and welcome, all you amazing people out there, to the Post Production Podcast. Thank you for joining us once again as we talk about the latest in TV and movies. I'm your host, Mr. Drew, and here with me, of course, is our co-host, Adam.
Yes, how are you, Drew?
Good, Adam. Welcome this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yay! Finally I'm clapping. I'm not supposed to clap. No clapping.
So we're talking about Altered Carbon.
We are talking about Altered Carbon, finally.
Yeah, it took a few weeks. I think I needed to have some breaths in between episodes.
You needed some perspective.
I needed just, this, for me at least, it was not like a binge-worthy kind of series. It was a rough kind of few episodes to kind of get into, and I mean, you just kind of breezed through it.
Oh, I
was a little harder.
I just put life on pause, and I chewed through it as fast as I could. I loved it. It was... Okay, so we know where I am.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, what'd you think of it as a whole?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I remember, the first preview that came out, it was kind of like, wait, this is interesting. Because the first preview that I saw, it was just this glimpse of, this kind of future world where people could basically extend their life. It was this process of, basically jumping from body to body, what they call in the series, what they call sleeving.
Yeah.
And then like the next follow-up preview, you get a little bit more of, wait, this is actually kind of like a murder mystery sort of thing. Well, that's set in this future world where this
there were two
body jumping
previews.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. There were two previews that were like
they were very different from each other.
They seemed very different. It was very weird. And you know what? I think it really kind of hurt my experience because the story of Bancroft and the murder and all this stuff, I think it took away from from Kovach's story. I understand this is how he comes back, and, it all kind of goes together at the very end. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those first like 3 episodes.
It's really messy.
It is kind of messy.
It's really messy on how they spread the story out.
Yeah, and I one thing I really liked is the story of Kovach and the envoys and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That stuff was amazing, and I think 4 through like 7 or 8 were like really, really, really good, and I was like really on board. But I had to stick through those first 3, and I was just like looking at you like I don't know, man. I really don't know if I'm even going to finish it. But as soon as
I'm trying, Ringo.
4,
I'm trying real hard to watch Altered Carbon.
Thank you, Samuel L. Jackson.
This is. I think this is just going to be spoilers because it's been out long enough for people.
Yeah, we wanted to give some people some time.
Yeah.
Before we covered it, but yeah, spoilers from here on out.
Yeah, but
before we get into anything, I think. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you're like a fan of like Blade Runner, I don't know, Black Mirror, I think you'd like this.
Yeah.
At least give it a shot and don't give up until episode 4.
Yeah, if Blade Runner, cyberpunk, future technology, all of that is just kind of rolled up into this. Just the premise itself, I love these shows that kind of go and dip into these future kind of these alternate things.
And the visuals are great.
I thought the special effects were fantastic. I thought they did a great job. The world building was cool. I thought it was really smart how they delivered to you this futuristic world, but they really didn't have to kind of try to sell you on all these different kind of, planets and realities. The settings that they use were pretty neat. You struggled getting through the first couple of episodes, and I can see that. But at the end, as far as everything was wrapped up, you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, by the end, I'm glad that they've closed up the storylines that they needed to, and I mean, I think that'll help season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can really get into Kovac and his relationship with his sister a little bit more, because she's not dead, right? Is she dead? Oh well, yeah, we don't know.
We don't really know.
Yeah. Well, I would just like to see more of him. But yeah, anyway, some of my favorite parts of this series are, the idea of stacks and the idea of re-sleeving. Like, that's just a really interesting premise. You know? I think that can get anyone into it. Like, there was one part where, like, the girl's, like, grandma was in this, like, tattooed, like, gang member sleeve. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is really interesting. But some people might be way turned off by this.
Yeah, I mean, just the premise of the possibility of having, the memories and the consciousness and basically the embodiment of the spirit of your loved ones at your fingertips to be able to bring them back, and talk to them,
it's
at
so
certain
weird,
times.
Yeah.
And it's the implications of just that concept.
Yeah.
You can talk about for ages.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I thought it was brilliant that the way that they delivered this, because, and again, it delves into things that are even current now that, if you have the money, it's free reign. It's free reign. You can basically do whatever you want. But if you don't, then, you suffer the consequences of getting what's left.
Yeah.
The kind of the tidbits. And you see this in a couple of episodes where, people who have died, but their stacks, that whatever, that technology, that disc that's in the back of their neck
that holds their
survives.
Soul,
yeah. If your family wants to bring you back, depending on their economic status, on how rich they are, depends on what kind of body you get. And then you could just get this random leftover body where, I mean, right in the beginning, you have a little girl who's in this like super old lady's body, and the parents really are like, sad. wait, what? And it's like, yeah, man, you get whatever's left.
Yeah.
And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
and everyone's like, yeah, that is just the way it is, Yeah.
And then at that point, you're wondering, why does our main character have this like soldier, body? And you realize how he came about and who put him in that sleeve. And
why?
That sleeve?
Because that sleeve. Because you really don't understand. I mean, you get a sense that this is just like some kind of cyber, like an ex-military body. But then you find out later the implications, and you're going, "Oh man, this is just mental."
And you know what? I actually didn't see that coming, but it's interesting that they did that, and it put a weird like stamp on the relationship between him and what's the officer's name?
Ortega,
yeah. But it makes sense because in the beginning she was like following him around and like she wanted to be right there and knowing where he was at all times. And you're just kind of wondering why, but it's just because she knew how dangerous he was as an envoy, and she didn't want him to destroy the sleeve. Yeah. And it's really interesting because at one point, and I thought they would do it. I thought they would like do this crazy thing because you see Kovac in a few different sleeves, right? Mm-hmm. We see our main character in a few different sleeves, but the main one that we see in like the present day, quote unquote, is that of Riker, the one we were just talking about. And
Joel Kinnaman. Joel the actor.
Yeah. And you see him in his sleeve, but there's one point where his sleeve is so like he was so messed up in a fight that his sister was like, all right, let's just re-sleeve you. Yeah. And I thought that like that was gonna happen. And I think that would have been a cool kind of thing to just change your main character, because no series would do that. But this has the power to do that, right? So I thought that would be an interesting thing. Like, let's have a different person, same character, different person, like different visual person, every season or, whatever. I think that would have been really cool. But then he's like, no, I have to save it. I'm like, Yeah. I thought that would have been like a cool entry point to
well, it was a brilliant way for them to kind of show, that they had to kind of commit to this one actor for the series. Although it opens up for the next series, it's like, yeah, we can just, we can switch out the main character actor as much as we want.
Well, they do that with a few different people. With like, his sister gets into Ortega's body for a moment.
Yeah,
and that was like really like a clever little twist. And she was like.
And I love the subtle change in her demeanor. I mean, even the look on her face was almost identical to the look that she would give.
Yeah, and what's funny is
on her other bodies, it was like that was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
And you have to give the actress who plays Ortega some props, because the little subtle hints before the actual reveal, before he realizes that it's his sister, like she's talking just a little bit different. Like, she's not talking like, and I went back and I watched it again. Like, after that scene, I was like, wait. So I went back and like, she hints very subtly that it's not her, just in the way that she talks. And then when she starts talking as the sister, it completely changes. But it was a very, like, that was a cool scene, definitely. But yeah, the idea of Reese leaving, it's just like, it opens up so many doors. And I like the idea that the envoys, at least his love interest, which I forget her name, the main kind of leader of the envoys,
Quellcrist Falconer.
Yeah. She realizes that we're basically losing our humanity by, Reese leaving and living for thousands of years and all this stuff. Like, what it means to be human is not the same as what it meant to be,
Right.
And these people who are living now are not human. Basically. So I like her ideals and her, like, all of that. I liked her value system, and she won over Kovac, for a moment, and had him fighting for the envoys. And that's where that disconnect between him and his sister kind of happened, because she was just like, yeah, I don't want to die. I want to live forever.
I don't think a lot of people kind of really understand that, there's so many subtle undertones to this series, because a lot of the theories in this are so far reaching. And, what you just talked about, that in this premise, the ability to live forever takes away from humanity.
Yeah.
And this kind of stretches off. I mean, there's religious, tones to it. There's spiritual tones to it. But for a lot of people and for a lot of cultures, the implications and the relationship between gods and mortals comes into play. Because, a lot of people think that, if I was immortal, if I was a god, it would be amazing. But in a lot of scenarios and in a lot of stories, the gods themselves, as they're portrayed, envy humanity in such a direct light, because they're mortal, because their lifespans are so short, because every moment is precious, because they'll never be in that scenario again. So they have to make the most of everything that they have. So, their lives have more meaning. Everything, has an impact. When you live forever, it's like, I can get to this whenever.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And there's a quote, it's death and knowing that you're going to die that gives life meaning.
Yeah.
And that's completely true, because if you knew you were going to live forever, you wouldn't do anything ever. Like, there would be no rush to get anything done, to hold, good relationships, to take care of yourself. You would just be doing literally anything you want. And that's what they do in Altered Carbon. They treat each other, people are fighting and killing each other and watching people be killed, because it's such a rare thing now.
Yeah.
It's very odd. It's a very like just grotesque and violent universe. And it's a very like kind of sad universe too. Like, these people
a little off-putting.
Yeah. And the fact that this world that they're living in is Earth, and they live in like Bay City, the Bay Area, like, it's, to see it like that, it's really kind of, no. I wouldn't know how I'd react to be living in that universe. Mm-hmm. I would die. And
well, I think, in that scenario, everything changes. Everyone's outlook changes. And the one thing I was kind of really, it's hard to put everything into one basket when you're exploring a series like this. And this is why I'm so excited that, that I'm hoping that there's going to be continued series, because you can really delve into the human factor of this type of society, because, from the first episode, which I mentioned earlier, you have this young girl that died and then she gets re-sleeved and now she's in this older woman's body.
Yeah.
Well, how does that affect someone psychologically? Because part of growing up is watching your body change and going through those changes as your body changes and coping with those changes. Yeah. And now that's ripped from you.
That could be a series in and of itself.
Yeah.
Of a person that gets, what does that do? Yeah. Is she ever going to get past that age that she was when she died? It's crazy to think about, but yeah, I didn't actually think about that too hard, but I just thought how crazy it was, and then you just kind of move on. But thinking back, it's very,
because I would assume in that kind of society, you would have even larger and more nut houses for the people that just it's like, I can't process this. I can't deal with this. I can't.
It's like, and it puts into question, like, should we even bring them back if they're just going to be, basically crazy and there's no room for them to go. There's nowhere for them to go, like, after they get sleeved into this person that doesn't. Basically, if you're not rich enough to either repair your original body or clone your original body to kind of keep that growth, then I would assume that people that die the first time and they get re-sleeved and then they get put in something else, at that point they're like, you know what, I'm done. Never again. Like if I go out, or I'm just gonna end my life now. I just can't deal with this. And it's sad because a lot of people, they have to be re-sleeved to realize that. And they realize, like, I should never have been re-sleeved. Because now this is going to be my last memory versus my actual first life.
Exactly. But then the interesting flip side, which we see with Ortega's family, she brings back her grandmother in the body of this, basically like this big bruiser, this big pierced kind of, dude. And it's such a great scene, because she's so happy, she's so jovial. She's with her family and she's doing all this thing. And I thought what was fun at the end, she's like, hey, come here.
Do you have any drugs?
I want to try this. I want to try that. I want to do this. Because why? Because I don't care what happens to this body.
Exactly.
I don't have to deal with the repercussions. So why not?
Yeah. And that's why. And that's literally everyone's thought process who gets re-sleeved or knows that they can be re-sleeved.
Exactly.
Is the fact that
why would I care about what happens to this body?
Yeah, they can put themselves in danger like never before, It's a weird premise, but it's interesting to think about, and interesting to think about just the different things that you could do with that technology. And you talked about how at, what was this convention here in Las Vegas? The one where Altered Carbon had so CES this year, the big huge tech convention that shows all the brand new technologies, TVs and VR and everything. They had a booth and they did it legit. Like it was science stuff, and they had people and actors going through this whole thing, and on like display they had a body in like the vacuum sealed plastic bag. And I think that's like the new poster on Netflix. I was scrolling through.
Has the
and they have the body in the
vacuum bag.
And they have that.
And then they had like a program running where it's talking about the technology of saving consciousness and transferring into other bodies, and people were blown away. They're like, wait, is this real? Like. because, everyone there is like totally serious. The actors and everybody part of that booth were completely selling it.
Yeah, when you're at a booth at a convention that's showing off the latest technology, and there are all these like VR things and whatever, and you go and see this,
the last thing you're thinking is it's a spoof.
Yeah, you're like, what? Like, I would love to just like be there and see people's reactions. Like that's
I if I didn't know anything about it, I would have loved to have stumbled upon it and just go, wait, no, really? Oh, let's talk about this, man. This is I'm hooked. Yeah. I'm interested. This is fantastic.
What were some things that maybe you didn't like so much?
I don't know. Because I enjoyed it so much, and for me, this type of world building and this type of series, it has so much potential. For me, it's easy to overlook a lot of details and a lot of little things. There's definitely a lot of, if I wanted to kind of like pick it apart, there's a lot of, different holes, and I think, ways that they could have done things better. You really you don't get a real deep empathy because, we have Kovac, which is the main character of the story. We don't really know a whole lot about him in the beginning. He just gets pulled up. He gets pulled out of the freezer, thrown in a body. He's supposed to be this, whatever. We're thrown this term envoy.
And we don't know what it is.
And we don't know what it is. And, from what the snippets that we're given is that, these envoys were like these super badass ultra soldiers, yada, yada, yada. But as the story progresses and, you start to learn more about it, I don't really think that they produced that level of, I would say, depth to the envoy title.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You get a backstory, and then basically you kind of understand that they were like these guerrilla soldiers that were basically kind of revolutionaries and rebellion, kind of a rebellion kind of group, and they were going against the system. But you really don't see where that elite kind of soldiery come in, where their reputation was earned, because they don't really show you much of what they did besides like these little snippets of these training.
Yeah, and they do a lot of training. They do, and I think the problem was they stayed at basically one area. You didn't see them do a whole lot of other stuff,
right? And now
you assume that you saw the beginning, middle, and end of like his whole journey, and you're just kind of like wondering, like, okay, so how did they get this name, this infamous kind of title,
right, that
everyone knows and is afraid of, like,
And that's, and for me, I get it, because they really, I think for them, it was kind of like, okay, we got a 50-50 chance here.
Yeah.
Either people are going to kind of get it and excuse the fact that we can't delve into this within this amount of episodes.
Yeah, I just wish they would.
I think it's something that they can really expand upon in the next season. I think for me, I was able to kind of excuse that, because the biggest advantage, and I think the biggest threat that this title of envoy produced from, opposite factions, was the fact that they had, and this is where they kind of concentrated, they had the mental training to be able to, I think the term that they called it was needle in. So basically they could zip across the galaxy to different planets and just pop into a body, immediately wake up and immediately go. Versus there's no transition. There's no, I'm disoriented. I don't know, I don't know this body. It's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
I need this transition process. I think,
and that's why in the beginning when he wakes up in the new,
right, he just got up and he was ready to go.
Yeah, no one was even,
and they were freaking out like, wait a minute, you should be. He's like, no, I'm fine. Where's the showers?
Yeah.
I think that's where the envoy, that title, kind of comes in, and that's where why they were so dangerous is because they were so versatile in that capacity, and they had the ability to just zip around.
Yeah.
So I got that from what they showed, But then again, you know, I think it kind of fell short in some other areas. I really thought that, you know, his fascination and his buy-in to this Quillcrest Falconers sort of ideal and her revolutionary group, it was a little weak. You just really didn't kind of get that sense of, they're just like a rebel band in the woods. I think they showed us a very small snippet of it, because when he got her alone and they were talking, and she basically kind of admitted to him that she was the original person that developed and created the sleeving, the whole the stacks technology, and she thought that she was kind of like, you know, taking mankind to this ultra kind of next level. And then in hindsight, she's going, it was the biggest mistake I ever made. You know, I want to rectify this, because now I see what it's done to our society. I see what it's done to us as a race, as a species. It's basically destroyed us. And then again, I was kind of like, okay, I get it. I can forgive it, because, you know, I can think my way through that. But I think, you know, it's a little bit of a disconnect for people that are just, you know, trying to kind of, you know, hook into the series. And again, it's something that I hope that they're going to expand upon a little bit more, you know, in the next coming series, because this has so much potential.
But for me, I think of a lot of it, I think it was very just convoluted. There were a lot of storylines and characters that mixed and matched, and they were just, you know, intersecting in different ways, and maybe not in all the ways that I would have liked them to be, you know, because there was just so much going on that you really had to like kind of really be paying attention to where everything was, especially when the sister came in. That became a whole different thing. I mean, I think it kind of lost some steam for me at that point, when you realize just how much is going on, and trying to pay attention and care for all of these characters. It was a bit hard to do. But I mean, if you stuck it with Kovac, Ortega, his sister, I think that's a good kind of whole situation. I like the Envoy stuff. I wish we saw more of that. I like the actor that played Kovac in the Envoy, kind of like his original.
Will Young Lee. Will Young Lee.
And then we have Byron Mann, as it says OG Kovac, and he was the one that, I guess he was right before this new Riker Kovac, apparently, like in the beginning when he gets like killed.
When he gets shot.
Yeah. That was him. He was okay. But Will Yun Lee, he plays the Envoy Kovac, that we kind of get that whole backstory. I loved his portrayal of that character. I think like all of his scenes made you really care about Kovac. So when you saw Joel Kinnaman's Kovac, you had a little bit more to kind of be dramatically, you know, just invested in this character.
It gave you a little bit more investment.
Because I did not like Joel Kinnaman. Like, I didn't like Kovac in the first 4 episodes. When you go back and you realize, you know, all this stuff, you realize that he used to be a pretty decent person. You know, but because of all these things that have happened, and, you know, losing his sister, losing the love of his life, he went down this road where, you know, all the things that he had learned, he used it for selfish reasons and things like that. And he learned to be a selfish person. So I thought it was an interesting kind of storyline for him. I know you liked Poe.
I loved Poe. I thought Poe was fantastic.
He was really good. I like the actor. But he got a little bit annoying at times. But that was kind of the point of the AI hotel. And they made it a point, like, no one stays there anymore because they are so obsessive over their guests that they will literally do anything to keep you.
And I actually thought that, you know, because when they talked about it, and then you started to, you know, you saw the relationship start, you know, I'm glad that, you know, Chris Connor, who plays Poe, and the way that they wrote Poe and his character, and the way that the scenes played out, you know, you see some of that obsessiveness, but it wasn't so overbearing. I thought they really kind of balanced it well. Within his Poe character. I just
think
kind of
Kovacs kind of puts him.
Yeah, and Kovacs was just like, dude, you know, I will give me some space.
Yeah, please. One storyline that I was not very invested in, and just was a little bit confused by was so Vernon Elliott, and then his wife. What was his wife's name? They had a daughter who. Their daughter Lizzie was kind of taken. I was kind of confused by that story, and I didn't really know. Like, by the time it came back to that story towards the end of the season, I just didn't know.
You didn't kind of know how it all came about.
Yeah, I was like, should I go back and see? Because I really wasn't sure. Because I don't know who Ava is. Like, his wife Ava. Did we ever meet Ava as her original self?
No. We got the backstory that Ava was caught, tried, and convicted of hacking.
Oh, see, I missed that whole
And then
thing.
she was put on ice. Right?
I missed that whole
thing. So that's her story.
Okay. And here's
and then you had Vermon Elliott, who's played by Atto Asando. Asando. Who I liked his character.
He was good.
Right. So he was invested in his daughter, who, we find out later, she was, and this is where it just gets really convoluted. She ended up going up to that cloud in the sky place, and she ended up being victimized.
Yeah.
And not only murdered, but and this is where this whole technology kind of takes that wacky turn, is when you're basically your spirit is rendered in a virtual world, and it can get stuck in that virtual world. The mind can only take so much.
Yeah.
So she just got stuck.
Yeah,
in this horrible loop of the trauma that she had experienced,
and that whole kind of therapy with Poe, that he kind of went into this virtual world and was helping her kind of regain herself. Like, I just didn't really care for it, and when she actually came back at the end and kind of was this badass, like, I still didn't buy it completely.
Yeah.
I was just kind of. Yeah, I mean, that was one part. I think that whole storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got weird.
It got very convoluted and very just confusing and very almost unnecessary, because it showed what this technology could do, but also I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it made for a convenient tie-in, and then you had this I guess this how would you say this? Unpredictable element that was introduced into this end scene, which ended up kind of being like this saving grace.
Yeah. But
I mean, it was okay. I mean, I was fine with it.
Overall, there are a lot of redeeming elements to the story. And yeah, I mean, I for one would be interested in a season 2, even with the problems that I had. I think they can learn from those, and I think they could develop a season 2 that can be really good.
Right.
And there's some shows out there that, maybe the first season or 2 are okay. They keep you watching, but then they go and, 3, 4, 5 could be really good potentially.
Yeah.
And then other shows go the opposite way.
Right.
So we'll see where this goes.
Yeah. And this is where it's interesting for me, because there was a show in the past called Dollhouse.
Okay.
And the premise of this show is you had a company that had basically these men and women that could be programmed to be any personality. So basically, they were basically empty vessels. They were programmed with a personality or a trait, and then they were sent to a buyer who wanted them to enact a role.
Yeah.
And hence the Dollhouse. The interesting thing for me is that Dyken Lockman, who plays his sister in this series, was on that show Dollhouse, was one of the dolls who was one of these people who got multiple personalities and everything else. So then again, she shows up in this series with the ability to re-sleeve and do all these different things. And I was like, this for me, this is brilliant because, you know, I love Dyken Lockman as an actor and actress and some of the things that she's been in. And I got to give her a short shout out because in this series, she did a scene with the other female lead, Ortega, in which they both fight. But in this scene,
there's a million there's
a million copies of the sister, and she had to do it completely in the nude, and it's such an intense scene. And you're going, you know, I got to give her props for going through something like that as an actress.
And
crazy, kind of like
crazy stuff.
I mean, you know, no pun intended, burying herself in that way to create such an intense scene. But yeah, I'm looking forward to season 2. I think it has so much potential, and it could go 1,000 different ways.
Hopefully, we see some new worlds, some new characters, some new sleeves for existing characters. I think it would be really cool. So yeah, I think that is about it. What do you think?
I could keep talking for like an hour, but no, I'm good. I really enjoyed it. It hooked me from the beginning. This was definitely my cup of tea. This was Drew in a nut basket and everything that he loves. So
I had to take a few sips before I decided I liked it.
Just drink the punch. Just drink the punch.
But yeah, that's about it, guys. Join us next week, and we will see you next time.
All right, guys. Have fun.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all so much for listening to Post Production Podcast. If you'd like to reach the show, you can email us any questions or comments at postproductionpod@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All those links are in the description below.
And if you like this podcast, hit that subscribe button and let us know by leaving a rating and review on iTunes. We would really appreciate it. See you guys next time.